guys remember that feeling in like speech class when you're sitting at the desks and like it's not your turn yet and everyone else is going and you're kind of like, I don't know. I was feeling a little bit, I was getting flashbacks today. So my name is Rob Wiltsey. I run an agency in LA called RWCP, and we do strictly video marketing. So I've been doing video marketing for about 15 years. So if you think back to 15 years ago with video marketing and like the state of that, you know, I was giving final deliverables on flash drives and DVDs mainly. YouTube was not around 15 years ago. Mobile video was not even, I think, wasn't even thinkable 15 years ago. So it's been pretty incredible watching the entire landscape evolve, and now just I think what makes me most excited about what we do is it's clear to me just the immense power of video content in everyone's pockets, and the power to, like, if you use it right, I just have this feeling like all of us are just missing that maximum opportunity for emotional impact all the time. And so that's been the character at the end of our stick as a company, is like, how can we continue to really learn our audience better and better and just emotionally resonate with them more and more. And so over the last 3 years with this kind of latest iteration of the company, we're a full in-house end-to-end production team. And over the last 3 years, we've done over 1,000 video projects in the last 3 years. A lot of which are like multiple videos. So this is a lot of content. So we get a lot of opportunity to really try things and see what works. And so the purpose of this talk, I think, so there's been like so much great content so far in this summit. So I was hoping to, you know, so my goal for this is really to offer, you know, first of all, things that no one else has said, and hopefully offer some insights that I feel like go unspoken a lot in terms of video content, and so we'll go 30,000 feet and look at some macro trends, and then we'll like look under the hood of what we think really makes an excellent piece of video content, and some nuggets that hopefully haven't been already, you know, hopefully it's new territory here. So the overview is, you know, I want to talk about what is the opportunity to earn attention in 2020, right? There's, you know, sometimes in marketing a silver bullet comes along, you know, that where it's like, oh, just spend money on Google AdWords, and, you know, no one else is doing that yet, so you'll get a lot of attention. Or, you know, what's the silver bullet for 2020, or is there one? Why video is still dominant and probably will be for the foreseeable future. The power of using avatars, not just in your marketing, but in designing each video. Why every video is essentially a mini funnel and should be thought of as a miniature funnel in and of itself. How to hook your audience every time, not bad. How long should your video be? Does video quality matter anymore now that we can all film stuff on our phones? And I want to end on the power of narrative content, because I think there's a lot to be said on that. So video marketing in 2020. You got to start with the bad news. Okay, so what's the bad news about video marketing in 2020? Well, or all marketing, right? Especially with video, though, there are more content creators than ever. There's more content right now. There's more people trying to get the attention of the very same people you're trying to get attention from. And so there's more competition. And so that's bad, right? Like, you know, there's just more noise out there than ever. And so I would argue there is no silver bullet in 2020 for marketing. I don't think there's, oh, just do this one thing and you're going to get ahead. You could argue TikTok, but I think we talked about that. I don't think the opportunity is quite so obvious there today. But the good news is related to the bad news, which is that there's also more eyeballs. Like, more of your audience is out there on the internet, also ready and waiting to hear from you. So, and it gets even better. Most content is, I would argue, ineffective. And the reason it's ineffective is most people still don't really know what they're doing when making video content, and I don't say that lightly. I think that what most people do, and this is kind of the first big insight I wanted to drop, which was most people, when they make content, what they are motivated by is mimicking or fitting in with the content that is made in their space, right? So if you think about cycling, that's one category. You think about yoga. That was another example that we talked about, which was like in any space. most people are they're trying to fit in. They're trying to create content that is to be expected from other content creators in that category. And the problem with that is a perfect recipe for drowning in the noise and not earning any attention. And so the opportunity, now that there are more eyeballs available for you to earn, the opportunity to earn those eyeballs is bigger, especially when you can identify those patterns and then break them. And we're going to talk about some ways to do that. So most people just imitate, right? So, and this is true across the board, but especially with video content where so much of it has to do with jumping out on people's news feeds, especially organically. There's just so much that can be done there that it's actually, I would argue 2020 is probably the biggest opportunity ever to really to really have an impact and really cut through that noise. So the 3 reasons we consume content. These are the 3 reasons we consume that we consume content at all. And it's important to spend some time ruminating on these 3, because I think when you're creating content, you have to really be intentional about which of these 3 types of value you're offering and making sure that you are offering it to an extreme. I think one of the biggest missed opportunities I see is a piece of content that is supposed to be informative, but it's only mildly informative, or it's not as entertaining as everything that's surrounding it on someone's organic news feed. So you can be 2 of these, by the way. I wouldn't be all 3. I think that's a little much, but I think defining your value is incredibly important, and it helps you feel like you're standing on really solid ground when you release this content, because you know the value you're offering and to that audience. So always ask the question, what type of value is my video delivering? The pyramid of attention. So if you have advertising on the bottom, the type of advertising that is currently earning our attention is primarily digital. Of digital, most of our attention on digital is on social media. I don't know if anyone can guess what's at the top of this pyramid, but the type of content that earns the most attention on social media is video. That kind of puts video at the top of the advertising pyramid, and it's why it is never a waste of time to get better and better at understanding this medium and how to harness it against your own audience. So let's talk about why video is so powerful. First of all, video is immersive, right? So if you look at all the types of content, I mean, you have audio, text, images. Video combines all those, actually. I mean, you can have text in a video, you're combining audio, you're combining visuals, and there's movement. This is a powerful medium, and it's in everyone's pockets, and it streams instantaneously. So this is a big deal. And video is also passive. This is really important because, so you could argue audio is passive as well. So passive meaning, if you're reading an article, you have to be proactive at reading an article. I mean, we just saw some stat, like people don't finish articles, right? They don't finish reading. I'll get some water. People don't finish reading. But who's watched a video for who's watched an hour-long YouTube video in the last 2 weeks? 1 month? I don't know, yeah. Oh, you had to? Oh, okay. Well, I have. Or even a 20-minute video. I mean, who spends 20 minutes diving into a single article anymore? I think you'd have to be particularly interested to do that. So the fact that video is passive makes it very powerful because you can earn huge amounts of attention. People spend 20, 30 minutes, an hour consuming a piece of video content on YouTube. You can't stare at a picture for an hour, and most people won't read an article for that length of time. So it's an incredible opportunity to earn a lot of mind share of your audience in a single day, right? So that's another powerful reason. Video has the ability to convey powerful emotions. So that's huge. I mean, who here has ever, guys don't want to admit this, but I mean, we've probably all cried at a movie at least once in our lives, right? Right, I agree. I'm not, I have. This medium is so powerful. I mean, when you think about music and when you think about the authenticity of telling people stories, and like this is just the ultimate emotion capturing mechanism that we've ever come up with. And I would argue that one of the biggest missed opportunities with almost all pieces of video content is that they're emotionally flatline. Because emotions, as I'm sure it's been mentioned by now by somebody, emotions are this, that's what's sticky about content. That's what sticks with you after the content's over, after you forgot the specifics of the content. Emotions is what's going to stay with you. I think Maya Angelou has that quote. I don't remember what somebody said, but I remember how they made me feel. And that's certainly true of video. Do you guys know Joshua Bell, the violin player? Who does not know who Joshua Bell is? So, awesome, because I've told this story like 3 times, and everyone's like, I know this story. So Joshua Bell is one of the most well-renowned violin players, I think. These days, that's like a $14 million violin he's playing. I know, it's like from like the 1700s. Joshua Bell played, this back in 2007, Joshua Bell played at Carnegie Hall to thousands of people, sold out show, and standing ovation, all this stuff. He made hundreds of thousands of dollars. He decided 2 days later to, to play for free right outside one of the busiest stops on the New York subway. So he's like, this would be fun. I'll just like play for free for people. And it'll be a fun thing to do. I'm not going to charge for it. He just thought it'd be a fun kind of experiment. And here's a video of him doing that. No one stopped and listened. Everyone walked by. No one even knows he was there. It looks about that. There's a time lapse, and it's pretty much that for a half an hour. So what happened? Well, the content was the same. It's Joshua Bell and his $14 million violin playing. What changed was the context of the audience. And I think if there's one lesson to take away from this, every audience has a unique mood, mindset, and expectation. Andy mentioned expectations in the previous session, which I thought was great. So let's hone in on expectation. Everyone's not only is everyone expecting to see Joshua Bell, they probably paid $1,000 to see Joshua Bell, got dressed up. They're ready. They're like, you couldn't ask for a better environment for someone to consume Joshua Bell's music. No one's expecting to see Joshua Bell in a subway. So no one, people don't even notice it's Joshua Bell. I think a few people threw some change in, but it was like a below average engagement for like a subway performer. So understanding the mood, mindset, and expectation, not just of your audience, but cross-referencing that audience with that platform, right? An audience, so the cycling audience on Twitter might have a different mood and a mindset than the cycling audience on Reddit or on Facebook. There's different expectations. These platforms have different vibes. Everything about the context, it just goes to show that context is at least as important as content, right? That's really what it goes to show, I think. So who here knows about building avatars for marketing? Like building an avatar? Nobody. You do though. You told me you did yesterday. No, that's okay. So great. Then I can talk all about it. So an avatar is a fictional character you create in order to encapsulate the rich detail of, I use the word bullseye viewer rather than target viewer, which is something, so if you look at this target, you really want to hit the bullseye. So this target, I would argue, is like everything that's in the bounds of your audience. But we're going to talk about why you should think of the bullseye rather than the whole target when creating content. So here are some questions you want to ask. So everyone can do this in their minds right now. Think about your audience. If you had to pick the most quintessential single person to embody, like who would be at the center of your bullseye, of your target. So how old are they? Where do they live? What gender are they? What's their personality? Where do they work? What is their income level? What social channels are they regularly on? What are their political sentiments? What is their marital status? How many kids do they have? Do they have a sense of humor? What do they do for fun? Are they religious, right? All of this starts to paint into some rich detail this avatar that is a really great way to begin building content for these people. So here's an avatar. Adam, is anyone Adam in here? Okay, I didn't know if, I just picked a name. Adam the cyclist. Adam's 32 years old. He's married and the dad of 2 elementary age kids. He lives in a comfortable middle-class lifestyle. He loves baseball, UFC. He goes to craft breweries. He works in personal finance. He loves camping, international travel, cooking, and is restoring a Chevelle SS in his spare time. Some of this may or may not be true. I don't know how good of this is for cycling, but maybe some of this is true. So every one of these things, when you're creating content, you don't just have to create content. You don't just create content. You don't see, a lot of people just want to find that Venn diagram intersection between my audience and my brand. How can I keep talking about, cycling with my brand? All of these colored things are things that would be equally compelling to them, and actually also these are other intersections that really need to be taken seriously. And we're going to talk about some, going back to Melanie's talk, all of these things would you can composite those as another 4-dimensional layer on top of all of that content, and now you have even more relevant content to create, from them. And now you're creating, thousands of pieces of content. But there's particular ways we're going to weave this in. I mean, you're not going to make a video all about breweries, but the point is that there's ways to integrate these things to make your content even more relevant. Okay, this is one of my favorite points in the whole presentation here. When you're making content, think about that avatar, but there's even a better trick, which is think about who's who's someone in real life that you know who embodies that avatar. If there's someone in your life that you know that embodies that avatar, have them in mind when you create the content. Maybe it's your friend Jack, right? You're like, what would make Jack, am I trying to be entertaining? What would make Jack laugh? What would make him, or what would he find extremely interesting? What that does, because you know this person in such rich detail that it's going to be such a better motivation for you to come up with what that content's going to be. So always ask, how can this content be more tailored to that individual? Knowing, are there more opportunities, knowing what you know about them, are there other opportunities to add ingredients to this video that are just going to up the relevance for the viewer? So I'm going to talk about what I would argue are the 4 main types of content. Hero content, Benton talked about this already. I mean, they do this incredibly well. This is content that you push out to your, this is content that you put a lot of money behind. In order to turn a lot of heads. You spend a lot of money on the creation of the content typically, and then you put a lot of money behind it in order to push it out. Hub content is what you call push content. So this is you have subscribers. You have your YouTube subscribers, you have your followers, you have your, you're on different social media, you have your email list subscribers. Hub content is the word we use for anything that you push out to people who are already subscribed to you and want to hear from you. Hygiene content, which is something that Andy just talked about, but I don't know if he used the word hygiene content, but it's content that you create to be discovered via search, so it's pull content. So you're trying to plant content to be discovered. And the reason I'm going over all this is just because I don't know if anyone kind of went through this whole list yet. So it's and then evergreen content, I think you guys kind of know what that is. That's content that is, you make kind of once and it has a very long, shelf life. This is sometimes content associated with your products, like features and benefits content for, maybe for every single SKU that you have. This could also be, a big hello world video that lives on the landing page of your website. This could be different pieces of content along the sales funnel that, maybe they last for a few years because anyone who's, going through that funnel, or maybe, maybe onboarding a new customer or client, maybe there's some evergreen content associated with that. Product photos, exactly. So maybe there's an e-commerce page that is up for 3 years, same photos, same video, same copy. So that's one common example of evergreen content. This is kind of the whole. I mean, everything is kind of one of these. And of course, you can composite pay-per-click on top of this. So hero content is going to be pay-per-click. Some hub content, probably not a lot of hygiene content is going to be pay-per-click or evergreen content. I thought I would just throw this in. There's not a smooth segue in and out of this slide. We all know about marketing funnels, yeah? Awareness, interest, decision, action. Is this like very familiar to people? So, yeah, this is a classic marketing funnel in the order that you want to create. You want to have content and drive traffic down this funnel. Every video is a mini funnel, and I love this point. So, the video is the same way. You have your hook, promise, delivery, and action within one video. Even a 30-second video has these points. Action's optional, but we'll get to that. So this is where things get fun. The hook, right? Who wants to hook their audience better in the first 1 second of their video? I would argue this is one of the most important things you can do on organic. If you're posting your content. So now we're talking about like social media hub content, right? So you have anything with a news feed where people are in complete control and they're scrolling through. How are you going to hook these people? The most important thing about the hook is subconscious. The hook is not conscious. What stops you in your tracks on content, on any sort of news feed, that is a subconscious mechanism that is stopping you. You don't know why you stop. I would argue, play a fun game, after this, as you're going through, if you find yourself stopping, and I am talking about video at this point. So if you find yourself stopping on a video that's auto-playing on social media, there's a good chance that you don't even notice what it was that stopped you. Like you might not even know what's stopping you in your tracks with that content. So a great little game to play is like go back and be like, oh, that was the first frame, that's what it was. And like you actually learn, like I've started doing this and I'm like, oh, I'm like really out of touch with what stops me like in my tracks. And I think all the better if you actually happen to be someone who is also in your target audience. Like if your avatar is in your target audience, studying yourself and studying your own behavior is going to give you an incredible amount of insight into what makes good hooks. And we're going to talk about hooks right now. And this is, like I said, the first 0 to 1 seconds of a video. The best hooks are primitive. So like I said, hooks are the first few frames of a video. And if those first few frames don't stop someone, because you're not just competing. So on a social media feed, you're not really competing with other competitors in your space. Like if I'm subscribed, to Hunt, right? Your videos aren't competing with other. Like you're competing with my other funny friends and like novelty accounts and meme pages that I follow. Like that's who you're up against to get my attention, right? So it has to, I think the bar is higher than a lot of people think for what is ever going to stop someone in their tracks on a video. The best hooks are primitive. This is, the best hooks go back like millions of years to our primate brains, I think, because these are things that our brain is hardwired to care about. A good hook is eyes. Eyes. The human brain is hardwired to lock eyes. Have you guys heard of? I'm going to say this word wrong. Pareidolia. It's a phenomenon where you see eyes where there aren't eyes. So it's like you ever look at a car and you're like, oh, that looks like a face, or like that car looks happy. Okay, so that's like our brains are literally finding eyes where there aren't eyes. Eyes are our brains will find eyes instantaneously. This might be the fastest hook. So I've seen some ads. I think other people understand this because I've seen a lot of ads. Like IBM had an ad that was just like 5 pairs of eyes back to back, like really fast cut. And before I knew it, I was 30 seconds into this video. I had no idea why, and I'm just like, I was hooked, and I went back and I went, wow, that was what it was. No context, right? No, they won that first step, which was the hook and the subliminal thing. So what's this hook? Celebrity. Celebrity would be a subset of what I would call this hook, which would be familiar faces. They could be celebrities. They could also be people you know. So yes, this is one of our videos. No big deal. Get something with Chris Pratt. Super fun. So familiar faces. So have you ever, this is obvious when you think about the fact that you could be in a crowd of people, of hundreds of faces, and what happens if there's someone you know in that hundred, your eyes will go, boom, and they'll see. Isn't that incredible? Their eyes will do that. So think about the power of using that as the first few frames of a video in someone's newsfeed, as opposed to a face they don't know, right? And one of the most powerful ways to do this is, they don't have to be broadly famous, but if you think about your space, some of the most key cyclists or faces that everyone would know in your space, those are incredibly effective. It's also why influencer marketing is so amazing, because you become that influencer. Now people know your face, and now your face being the first frame of the video is a hook in and of itself. Everyone stops for Gary V, these days, because everyone knows, we might be over the crest of that wave. I don't know, but familiar faces. What's that one? Yeah, delicious food makes us stop. That's cute puppies are another good one. Babies work well too, especially for parents. If you're targeting, if you know that your audience is parents, babies, little kids, like will make them stop too. What's this one? Yes, yeah. So anyone ever open a cupboard and something falls out and they catch it and they're like, and you're like, I have powers. I have like reflex powers. Our brains, like when they sense, our brains are capable of split-second anticipation that comes into play when you're trying to, hook someone at the beginning. So if you actually can start your first frames of your video with some sort of anticipatory action, that can be incredibly effective. What's this? It's obvious, but landscapes, beautiful landscapes work incredibly well. That's something that also will make people stop. Drone shots are great. I'd argue probably less strong than some of these other examples, but it's also I would argue a hardwired hook. And of course, unicorns pooping ice cream. Benson's not here. I was giving him a shout out here. Fantastic hook. Love everything about this hook. Everybody poops. Those were all general hooks. Those are all like universal hooks that will hook anyone. But those aren't all the hooks. There's audience specific hooks, and that's where the avatar comes into play. So let's go back to Adam. So Adam is a cyclist. So some hands on handlebars. This was our hook for a video we produced for Strava. This is not from our video, but this is perhaps camping imagery would be a good idea for Adam. We know that he's restoring a Chevelle SS, whatever I said, and so he's machinery, like macro machinery, is something that's going to trigger him. Like imagery that is deeply connected to things he's interested in is going to work. If statistically, most cyclists are into beer, then a few frames of beer at the beginning is going to stop them. They don't know why they're stopping. It doesn't have. So then I had a great conversation 2 nights ago with someone who asked, well, does it have to relate? Does the hook even have to relate to the video? And I would say, yeah, make it relate to the video, because they might go back and you don't want someone to go back and be like, that was a cheap shot. I'd rather get a fair shot at a hook than a cheap one. But a cheap one will work. But you don't want the I like the authenticity of that intersection of it's on brand and a really effective hook, right? So how can my hook be stronger? Always ask this with every video. And you could probably ask this 5 times in a row and keep finding stronger hooks, by the way, so on a single video. The promise, equally as important to the hook. So you've got their subconscious attention. They don't know why they've stopped. The conscious brain is coming online, and it's asking, why should I stick around? What is this? I'd say maybe 2 to 5 seconds you have to really get them, and so the promise is the time when you clearly communicate to the viewer what they're about to watch, and so not only the subject of the video but the form of the video. So maybe knowledge is going to be shared, maybe there's going to be an inspiring message, maybe there's going to be an anecdote that's about to be told. A product's going to be showcased. What is about to be conveyed? Because the quickest way to lose their attention is to allow confusion. In those 2 to 5, they can't opt in to watch your content if they don't even know what this content is about to offer them. So this is incredibly important that you actually have that you clearly communicate what value is about to happen in this video. That can be done implicitly, explicitly or implicitly. So that could be you saying, hello, this is what I'm about to talk about. Or it could be, there's implicit ways just through the style and through, maybe some clever imagery that it will imply what's about to take place. But you want to make sure that there's no ambiguity with what they're about to watch. I've seen this problem too, where there's a video with too many opening shots, and you're like, I don't care. I don't even know what this is. So super important. So is the promise clear, and is the promise compelling to my target viewer? The delivery, pretty much everything after 5 seconds is your delivery on that promise. Now, this, depending on the content you're making, this could be the amount of content, the amount of talking points about how to deliver well on content I could talk about that for 8 hours. So I was trying to decide what to talk about. I was going to answer this question, video length, which Andy just talked about, in a way, through his quote from Jerry Seinfeld. I literally was going to share that Jerry Seinfeld quote, which was, we all have infinite attention for things that are really important to us. So I don't know if you guys have, the most common question I get with all of our clients is, oh yeah, how long do you think the video should be? Do you guys ever wonder that? That seems to be a big question with content. The length, people really spend a lot of time thinking about that the length has to be the right length. And I would argue it's completely the wrong question. All of us have infinite attention for something that's extremely interesting to us. And so it's not a question of how long should it be. It's a question of how long can this video, the way it is, afford to be and stay extremely interesting. So maybe that's 30 seconds, maybe that's 2.5 minutes. With our content, we're always a fan of we make the content we intended to make, and then we have a huge amount of self-awareness to say, okay, is this as interesting as we thought it was? If not, we distill and crunch it down, because we do not want there to be any opportunity for the viewer to go, I'm bored, and bounce. So how long should a video be? As long as it can afford to be without getting boring and without losing interest. And all of us, I think, when the content we create, I think we all like to think highly of our own content. And so I think it's about having that self-awareness to be like, okay, first of all, am I in this audience myself, and would I even watch this content? That's a good litmus test, is would this content really stop me in my tracks? If I was off hours and I could do anything I wanted, would I stick around for this content? Video quality. Does video quality matter? It's a variable. What are the considerations with video quality? The pros of UGC, have you heard of that? User-generated content. So that's pretty much things that you make on your phone, Instagram stories, or just very loose, content that's not very highly produced, or maybe not produced at all. It's easy to make, fast to make, cheap to make. That's awesome, which is good because we need a lot of it, right? You need a lot of content to populate. If you're doing Instagram, how many stories are you posting per day, right? So high frequency audiences, it's a high frequency type of content, so you can post it all the time. It's great for social, email, etc. And there's been a lot of, I don't know if you guys have been part of this conversation, but there's been a lot of sort of question in the marketing world of well, what is the value of why would I pay $20,000 for a highly produced video? That's a question that's been raised, and I'm fascinated by that question because that's what we do best, is the high end stuff. And it's well, yeah, what is our value? And the value changes, and we're always trying to be very self-aware. We're where is our value? We never want to suggest that that kind of content would have value where there's no value. So in 2020, the pros of high quality video is it elevates your brand. So this is probably the one thing that it does best that is more difficult for lower quality content to do. So when you see, that first hook slide I showed you with the eyes, that was for a brand new skincare company called Caviar and Cashmere. They want to be perceived as Olay. They don't have a lot of money. So we produced, for a very cheap price, we produced that video that, and I could play it if anyone wants to see it, but it's basically like, you know, our aim was to make something that it might as well be the next Olay, right? Does it look like an ad? Yeah, it could look like an ad for sure. However, when people see that, they might go, oh, I don't want to watch an ad. But now they're thinking, okay, but Caviar and Cashmere, it's the next brand. It's the next legitimate brand. This is not some silly startup. This is, you know, it does something to the viewer to really make you go, okay, well, you know, it really moves the needle on the impression that someone has on your brand. And so it's also less common. So highly produced content does stand out a lot more. So there's more content than ever online, but there's not more highly produced content. There's more UGC content. And so for the most part, and so that gap has widened so there's like 99 ways to do a piece of, have you guys heard of banner blindness? You know what this is? Banner blindness, which is if something, we all have it. So if something looks like an ad, we tend to go, I don't want to watch an ad, right? So highly produced content does have to be very careful to not feel like an advertisement. If your goal is to, you know, get more organic engagement. Now, if you're doing pay-per-click on a piece of content, it can get away with looking like an ad more, because if you've targeted properly, presumably the person that you're targeting is glad to watch the ad, hopefully, because they're actually in the market for that thing. But if you're trying to earn organic engagement, you want to be careful. So there is a way to earn, and so Benton is a fantastic example of how premium content can be extremely engaging and not feel like an ad, and you're happy to watch it. So it is definitely possible, and I think a lot of content producers are careless with their content because it does seem like too much of an ad. It's not really interesting. It's not really adding any of those value points we talked about. So if it's adding those, if it's entertaining, interesting, inspiring, and informative, it's going to perform even if it's even if it seems like an ad, if it's done right. And it has the potential to be more memorable, I would argue, especially if there's some craftful storytelling behind it, and we'll get into that a little at the end. And these are kind of the best uses for it. Pretty much anything other than, we'll create a lot of hub content for our clients, but they're not going to, it's the exception to their hub content. It's not their average hub content, right? So, because you don't want everything populating your Instagram to be like a very highly produced piece of content. But if you have them just enough, then it tends to drive attention because it's not the norm. The action. So if someone's actually made it to the end of a video, even if it's 30 seconds, especially if it's like 2 minutes, you have earned that attention, right? You haven't bought it, you earned it. If someone makes it to the end of the video, even if it's an ad, right? Even though you paid for the ad slot, you didn't, you earned the fact that they made it all the way through. They're interested. If there's, whatever your KPI is of your content, whether that's, clicks, whatever your KPI is, this is the opportunity to really be explicit about either asking for that, if it's like, hey, shop here, or it's subscribe, or it's click this, whatever. This is the only time I would argue that you should have an explicit ask. You could have an explicit ask earlier, but it's tricky. It's a little bit of a landmine. Again, because of banner blindness and people feeling like they're being solicited. If they've made it to the end and you have a really genuine ask, that's where I would put it as a rule of thumb. And so, yeah, KPIs. All right, so let's talk about narrative content. Narrative content, I think, it's something we're incredibly passionate about. Who's seen Humans of New York stuff? Okay. Those are, I don't know about you, but those are some of the most engaging pieces of content on the internet that I see. What they do, and the reason it's engaging is you're meeting a person and you're diving into their world, and there's no strings attached. The power of, so we use the term storytelling a lot in marketing, and I don't even always know what we mean by it anymore, because I don't know if we usually or always mean, we definitely don't always mean a story with a character and a beginning, middle, and end. It's not what we mean most of the time. I think we mean kind of more vague ideas like evoking our brand or things. But I'm talking about storytelling with a character with a beginning, a middle, and end. The power of storytelling is so old. It's like tens of thousands of years we've been telling stories. It's ingrained in who we are. And I wanted to go into some of the value of that, because it doesn't have to be highly produced to tell a story. You could shoot a Humans of New York thing on your iPhone and edit it with a free editing software. So we want to talk about like what are the narratives that you should be thinking about. Odds are everyone in this room has not even come close to telling enough stories, or maybe they haven't told any stories. And the stories I'm talking about are customer stories, employee stories, founder stories, and stories that reflect the brand. So customer stories, that doesn't, so make no mistake, customer story does not, I don't necessarily or even mainly mean testimonial stories, maybe testimonial stories. Here's the thing about testimonial stories. Again, banner blindness. They go, oh, this is just an ad. Yeti does this really well. Like they kind of flirt with that, where they tell a story of like a fisherman, and it's like this and it's like a long video. Have you guys seen the Yeti videos? And they're these narrative videos. Yeti's the ice chest. It's like really premium ice chest, and so they'll have a fisherman, and he's in a boat, and he's sailing out on a lake, or he's rowing out on a lake, and you're diving into this guy's life, hearing about his life philosophy, and you're just engrossed with this guy. And there's just a Yeti ice chest like in some of the shots. It's like kind of like product placement. They're like creating entertaining content and product placing themselves, basically. I would argue Yeti doesn't even have to do that. They don't have to ever have the ice chest. Like if you just told really good stories, and Yeti is, it's almost like it's like a little gift to their audience. Like we're just going to give you this story. We're going to give you this emotional experience that's going to stick with you and be meaningful to you, brought to you by Yeti. I don't think they always have to do the ice chest. I get why they do. Nike's a great example of this as well. So this is all the brand stuff we talked about. I would argue that a lot of that branding stuff does not have to be high investment. It can be great hub content to create, like just telling stories. Even if, like Humans of New York style, do 30-second stuff. Find someone who has an incredible story, who is your customer, who hits the emotional epicenter of your brand. What does your brand exist to do? If it's cycling, like what are the, just dive into the passion of cycling. Dive into the stories of people and like the incredible, goals that they have, or the lifestyles that they live, and tell those stories in a way with no strings attached. Just tell good stories. People will never regret watching an emotional story, especially one that they resonate with. Employee stories. So this is one where you want to go a little bit deeper into, they are going to be talking about their values, what they care about. It's a great opportunity to sort of evoke and demonstrate company values and things like that through an employee. So maybe there's something that an employee did that just really is remarkable, that in their personal life, right? Not like at their desk, like thinking outside. I think a big point about all these is breaking outside the four walls of your company and telling stories about the people. It's not about the people in the company. It's about the people. And it's understood that these people are part of the company. I think that's a big difference. And it opens up your line of sight to what makes a valid video to tell. What makes a valid story to tell. So an employee story, what stories can you tell about your employees, or about, other, your other partners and things like that, that really, really speak to who you are as a brand. And like we've said earlier today, humanize the brand. If you can humanize the brand, that's massive. Founder stories, the same thing. I think that's an opportunity to just get very explicit about, this is my story about me starting the company, and what the vision was, and what I'm excited about, and what the challenges are, and what the big vision is. And then stories that reflect the brand. Stories that have nothing to do with the brand other than we care about the message in the story. We care about there's something in the story that we want more of. There's something in the story that reflects the way we think the world should be, right? Big stuff. It doesn't have to be someone who's interfacing with it doesn't even have to be a story about someone who's in your target demographic or anything like that, right? So don't be afraid to, and you guys can play around with this. Like, don't be afraid to play around with start with what's the most compelling story of someone in your life, and what threads can be connected to your brand and what you care about. And if you tell that story well, it can be incredibly powerful. Good stories are about omission. So storytelling. Does anyone listen to This American Life? Ira Glass. Does anyone know who Ira Glass is? That guy with the high-pitched voice. He's so good. He has some of the best advice on storytelling ever, and this is something that we dive into a lot. But basically his idea is stories are always trying to be bad. Stories are always trying to suck, right? And your job as the storyteller is to duct tape and string, prop the story up into something that's really, really good. And usually that has to do with omission. So think about like a block of marble, right? And you're trying to carve a statue. You get to that statue by taking away everything that isn't that statue, right? So when you're thinking about telling a good story, you're thinking about what is, you're taking out the inconvenient parts. You've got complete control over the story you're telling. Here's the person, because see, a lot of times, like if you're trying to, so this is like some real practical advice, which again, I could talk about this forever, about like how you conduct interviews and how you get that out of people. But don't be afraid. There's the version of the story. So there's different types of content, right? There's there's sort of more verite film style that's just like, you're just trying to capture the raw, exactly what happened, the way it happened, maybe a little more. But what I would argue is, in the stories you're going to want to tell, you're going to want to have complete control over the story you're telling. Who is the character? What's the story in there that is the perfect story for your brand? Don't worry about omitting, because they're going to want to tell, they're going to tell their story the way they saw it. It's your job to sort of massage the way it's being told, ask the right questions to evoke all the right stuff, and then when you go to edit it, you can put in exactly what you want, right? But it is about deciding ahead of time, before you start filming, what story you're telling. Not, oh, I'm going to film them and whatever they say is just what the video is going to be. It's, you want to 100% roadmap everything you want them to say, and then just evoke that from them. It's all truth, right? It's all true. It's all their true story. But it's not like you have to, it is a matter of omitting what's not convenient so that, again, there's no confusion. Everyone knows exactly what the story is, why you're telling it, and people can understand why you told it given what your brand does. I love this about stories. We talked about the promise, right? And remember how I said that some promises are implicit, not explicit, so it's not, you don't have to go, what you're about to watch is a film, video about this person. This is a huge benefit of narrative content, and why we tend to make it through Humans of New York content is because we're meeting a person, and the whole context of seeing it is like, I know that I'm in for a very interesting story. I don't know what the story is, but there's an arc to this story. There's going to be a beginning, a middle, and it's going to resolve itself. I can't know what this story is unless I make it all the way through. So it's a fantastic form of a video where if there's a main character and they're beginning to tell a story, it's very sticky, especially if the hook is good, and especially if the first opening lines are very, very intriguing, right? So another reason why we're so big about this kind of content for brands. A great story leaves an emotional impression. So this is something that is the most unique of when you compare it to text and written word, and when you compare it to photos and just all the other kinds of content we have. A great story, particularly when done with video, is something that you're hearing the emotion come from the person. There's all kinds of opportunity for little things to stick and for things to be relatable to your own life, and that's very powerful as well. Stories do stand out from the noise. It's not a type of content you see a lot. You don't see narrative content all the time. I think you see it once in a while done really well, where someone's actually telling a story of some of these people, and it elevates brand, like I said. And I think I might be getting ahead of myself on one slide. There we go. Okay, so a story can be so back to kind of what I said earlier. Narrative content is so cool because if you were to bullet out, like, here's all the things I want my audience to know about my brand at every stage of the funnel. Here's everything I want people to know about this product, about our company, about our whatever. There's always an alternative way to communicate it through a story. And this is something that's really fascinating. So, for example, if you're talking about how, this, I'm going to make something up that's probably not true about your brand, but like if you're talking about bike wheels, if one of your claims about the bike wheel is that it's just more durable, right? I don't know, it's just less likely to get like tweaked in a collision or something like that. You could say that. You could just assert that in a video or a piece of content, or you can tell a story about how one time this guy got in this accident and what and how his wheel was fine or so. Like you could just, there's always this narrative alternative, if you think about it, to whatever bullet point you want to say. And so I think you still say it explicitly in other content, but it's a great way to think of other content ideas about, like, oh yeah, how can we how can we also communicate that in some sort of a story? And that might be all I have. Oh, I have one more slide. Again, back to what I said before. Analyze your target market and analyze the content that's being put out on a daily basis from your competitors, from other fans of the industry. Odds are what you're going to find is a lot of that content looks the same, feels the same, the music's the same, the pacing's the same, it's the same kind of shots, it's all in the same kind of mood, right? So the biggest opportunity you have in 2020 to have massive effects is play around. This takes experimentation, but play with ways of doing something that no one else in your space has done. Now, a lot of those won't work, but among that set of types of content will be a few things that work way better than everything else because they'll get noticed. So that's the big experiment: is find you're searching for gold essentially, right? But don't search for gold where everyone else is searching for gold. It's noise. Try to do a little prospecting. Get out there and try to find styles of content and modes of videos, formats of videos. For example, like if everyone does, product-centric stuff, do something human-centric. If content is usually very short, try something long. If content is very if it all sort of has this very silly style to it, do something sincere. If everything's sincere in your space, do something silly, right? All of these things are where you can have massive attention. So don't be afraid to get weird. Do a lot of experimenting, do a lot of measurements, and yeah, hopefully you guys can all take away a little something in 2020 and with your content game. So that's what I got. Thanks.